Hi, honey. What's your view as non-Filipino who's been to the Philippines a few times and knows a bit about Philippines and probably knows more about Philippines than your missus? What's your view on how Duterte is running the country?
Well, so as somebody who is married to somebody from the Philippines and who has family in the Philippines and who's been there, and obviously I've read upon the history of the Philippines and know quite a lot about its politics, I'd say he's currently doing a really good job. It's one of the few times, in fact if not the only time, the Philippines has had a leader and a politician who is truly for the people, as politicians should be. He's clearly not on the make, he's not corrupt as every single other one has been, outrageously corrupt, and it never ceases to amaze me that the fact that people still support those individuals who are clearly corrupt, being shown to be corrupt, are obviously corrupt. And as somebody who's from the West and Britain, where, yes, I don't doubt for a minute that there are elements of corruption, but it's on nowhere near the kind of scale as existed in the Philippines, where everybody at every level within the bureaucracy of not only general government but local government were on the make and on the take, to the extent where it hammered the Philippines. The Philippines should be a tiger economy. It should be up there with South Korea, Singapore. It isn't, and the reason it isn't is purely down to that level of corruption at every level within government, and that goes, side by side with the law, etc. And that's why the drugs problem became so big and is so big, to that level of corruption at every level within government, and that goes, side by side with the law, etc. And that's why the drugs problem became so big and is so big. And in every country where you get that level of corruption, and where the police are on the make, where the military are on the make, where everybody's got their hand in the pot and is taking a piece out, nothing filters down, and therefore you get poor road networks, poor communication networks. People don't want to invest there, they don't want to put businesses there. And a really good example of that is I was reading a piece by the guys who set up the SM Mall in Davao, and when they had gone through all the sort of legal process and everything and bought the land and sort of started to break ground, they'd had very little to do with Duterte, who was mayor at the time.
30 seconds. And
they'd also had very little to do with any kind of level of corruption really within the local government. And they were very surprised about that, and they just thought it was somebody who was must be in overall control, who was very in control of who was on the take, and obviously would want the lion's share for themselves. So when Duterte turned up whilst they were breaking...
Part 2?
Okay. So where was he? Yeah. So basically when he turned up at the SM Mall, he was speaking with the guy who was in charge and the director of SM Malls and all the rest of it. And it's from his mouth that it's been reported that they, in a roundabout way, asked him what he wanted from everything, which was basically they were expecting to pay a bribe, because that is and was the norm in the Philippines. And everywhere they'd built them previously, be that, Cebu, Manila, wherever, they'd always had to grease lots of palms. And all Duterte said was that, I don't want anything personally, I'd just like you to employ the local people, give them work. And that kind of tells you a lot about the man. He is completely incorrupt. There has never ever been any sniff of corruption about him. And this is where we get onto the whole drugs problem in the Philippines, is it is at very senior levels of not only local government but full, country, federal type government levels, that they are involved within the drugs trade, and that's why it's become such a huge problem in the Philippines. And I think the problem is in the West is that we cannot just not fathom the level of the problem of drugs in the Philippines. We've never experienced it in the West on the scale that it is in the Philippines, and how it permeates every single part of society and was such a huge problem. And the fact that everybody was involved in it, you know, from senior politicians all the way down. So we're talking potentially presidents, certainly senators, have been actively involved within the drugs trade, every level of seniority within the police force, within the military, etc. And he said in the military, etc. And it's a huge problem. And obviously Duterte's come along and said, you know, I'm going to do something about that. And finally the people of the Philippines have got so fed up with it and seen it as such a problem, and finally got so fed up with these corrupt politicians that they voted him in.
So, with 1 minute and 10 seconds, what do you think of what the West thinks of EJK in the Philippines?
Well, I think the problem in the Philippines is, and again what people fail to realise in the West, is that the people who own the newspapers, the news reporters, etc. within the Philippines don't support Duterte, because they're the ones who are corrupt and are involved within the drugs trade. Everyone in the Philippines knows this, it's widely known. There's lots of evidence to back it up, there are the convictions to back it up, there are the testimonies to back it up. None of that really gets reported in the mainstream press in the West, because, you know, you get people who work for Reuters who are reporting things, that's then republished by CNN, etc., Fox News, who are clowns anyway. And basically those people are paid for by the yellows, you know, the opposition to Duterte.
Oligarchs.
And what people have to understand is that there is...
Wait, honey. Because I like that bit. So we'll do part 2. Part 2 on EJK.
Right, so extrajudicial killings. Now, the media in the West would have you believe that the police, the military in the Philippines are just going around and randomly murdering people at the behest of the president, Sir Duterte. This couldn't be further from the truth. There is absolutely no evidence being put forward to support extrajudicial killings. And again, it is the Western media basically being lazy in how they follow up and verify information that's passed to them from reporters from within the Philippines who, as I've already previously been said, are funded, paid for by these corrupt senior politicians who are basically funded by the drugs trade. Yes, the number of killings have increased since Duterte declared his war on drugs. And there's a multitude of reasons behind that. Probably the main reason is actually the drug dealers' clearinghouse. It's been much more difficult for them to deal drugs. They can't have those on the periphery dealing drugs on their behalf anymore. They need to take charge of a lot more of it to themselves in order to make the same amount of money. And also they don't want these people testifying against them, so they're clearinghouse, they're killing off their own in order to protect themselves. The second one is, yes, the police have killed a lot more, but previously a lot of the police were on the make, on the take, so they wouldn't take on drug dealers anyway. They would kind of go in, if they were shot at, they'd take a step back and let them escape. There's no way they can get away with doing that now. They're being scrutinised much too closely, and so now they are actually going up against them properly. Also previously, if a policeman did kill one of them, they'd be hung out to dry. They'd get no support, no backup, no legal representation. They'd be basically expected to represent themselves, which they were obviously completely incapable of doing, and they're going up against people who are worth millions, you know, that are funded by, which they were obviously completely incapable of doing, and they're going up against people who are worth millions, you know, that are funded by senior politicians, funded by the drugs trade. Duterte acknowledged this and basically said to them, look, you know, do it legally, which, you know, he's down on record as saying it's been recorded. He didn't say go in and just kill them, but what he did say is, if you operate within the law and you do it as per the law, if you do kill someone, I will back you up to the hilt. And that's the first time that had ever happened. And so that's why, yes, there has been more killings. But again, that's tailed off now. You know, we're over that hump now, and people are already starting to see the benefits of that. Yeah, it's not been an easy transition. The prisons aren't set up for it. The rehabilitation systems aren't really set up for it. And again, that's because the country suffers with crushing poverty. And again, the West fails to realise that. But until you clear house, until you get rid of those corrupt politicians, which is in the process of doing, get rid of those drug lords, the drug dealers, these people who are, again, corrupting every element of society within the Philippines. Until you do that, you can't start to make those improvements. So he's done, you know, he's kind of nearly over the first hurdle now. He's not quite there, but then I don't think you'll ever completely get rid of drug dealing, just as we haven't in the West. You know, there's drug dealers going on in the US, you know, in the UK, everywhere in Europe. It's just nowhere near the level that you see in the Philippines, and it doesn't permeate every level of society like it has done in poverty. And again, the West fails to realise that. But until you clear house, until you get rid of those corrupt politicians, which is in the process of doing, get rid of those drug lords, the drug dealers, these people who are, again, corrupting every element of society within the Philippines. Until you do that, you can't start to make those improvements. So he's done, you know, he's kind of nearly over the first hurdle now. He's not quite there, but then I don't think you'll ever completely get rid of drug dealing, just as we haven't in the West. You know, there's drug dealers going on in the US, you know, in the UK, everywhere in Europe. It's just nowhere near the level that you see in the Philippines, and it doesn't permeate every level of society like it has done in the Philippines.
And he's only
he's only been in power for so long. But what you have to see is now that other countries aren't afraid to invest so much. People aren't afraid now to get involved because he's got rid of that level of corruption as well. So it's one of those where everybody in the Philippines knows what's going on. They are more than aware of what is happening. They are not stupid people. They are a very well-educated society. Lots of them go to university. They've probably got a higher, well, I don't know the figures, but from my experience, certainly I would say they have a higher level of university education than you find certainly in the USA. And they are more than aware of what's going on. They know about the misreporting within news, within media, and obviously it isn't reported the same way in the Philippines as it is overseas.
So thanks for social media.
Yeah, social media has played a massive part, because you then actually get to find out what's really going on. And also, because everything gets videoed, you also get to hear about when things are misreported, misrepresented.
Sorry.
And a good example of that is when Duterte is being accused of insulting Obama and various other things, where when you actually afraid now to get involved because he's got rid of that level of corruption as well. So it's one of those where everybody in the Philippines knows what's going on. They are more than aware of what is happening. They are not stupid people. They are a very well-educated society. Lots of them go to university. They've probably got a higher, well, I don't know the figures, but from my experience, certainly I would say they have a higher level of university education than you find certainly in the USA. And they are more than aware of what's going on. They know about the misreporting within news, within media, and obviously it isn't reported the same way in the Philippines as it is overseas.
So thanks for social media.
Yeah, social media has played a massive part, because you then actually get to find out what's really going on. And also, because everything gets videoed, you also get to hear about when things are misreported, misrepresented.
Sorry.
And a good example of that is when Duterte is being accused of insulting Obama and various other things, where when you actually speak Tagalog, you understand the language and you understand that certain words can have multiple meanings, and actually take the thing in the whole context of what it's said, you'll realise that, again, completely misreported in the Western media. You know, you can take sound bites of whatever anybody says and make it appear that they believe in one thing one way or another, or are insulting someone, and they cut big chunks of that speech out. If they played the whole speech, translated it properly from somebody who is actually a native Tagalog speaker, they'd realise, number one, it had been mistranslated by the reporters who'd initially reported it to the likes of CNN, Sky News, Bloomberg, all the rest of it. And they'd also realised that it was a soundbite. It wasn't the full text of what had actually been said, and it was taken completely out of context. So now, in a way, I think he's doing a great job. He's doing a fantastic job in the Philippines. All my family in the Philippines, some of whom live in Davao, who've lived with him being in charge at a high level of government, local government that was, for a very long period of time.